And now, AM 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
6 o'clock in Vancouver. Sterling Fox with you. Welcome to Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata on this edition of Experts on Call here on AM 650. As always, my co-host, joining me live in studio, Tony Giventu, the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and the condo columnist over there at the Vancouver Province. Hello, Tony.
Hi, Sterling. It's a great night, isn't it?
It is a wonderful night, and you brought a new guest along to the studio. Please introduce Cheryl to our listeners.
We are really fortunate because we have Cheryl Vickers, who is the acting chair of the Civil Resolution Tribunal. And the Civil Resolution Tribunal was introduced earlier this year through legislation. And as it gets developed over the next year, it's going to provide an alternate dispute resolution process for condo owners.
Right.
It's an overwhelming change that we'll see. It, you know, we've been talking about it in a variety of ways. It's almost a way of creating strata police to make sure people start to comply with the Act and the bylaws.
Oh, my. Okay, so we have British Columbia's future top strata cop in studio with us. Cheryl, welcome.
Kind of like that.
Nice of you to join us tonight.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. I'm not sure I'd call myself a strata cop.
A strata cop. Perhaps that's a demotion, and it's not even the real deal. Now, the Civil Resolution Tribunal, which, as Tony has already mentioned, will be an alternate dispute resolution device for British Columbians. When can we expect hearings to begin for the Civil Resolution Tribunal, Cheryl?
Well, at the moment, the planned implementation date is going to be fall to late 2014.
So we're just about a year away.
Just about a year away.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Civil Resolution Tribunal, and the reason we're a year away still is there's a lot of work to do to get it up and running. It's going to be the first online dispute resolution tribunal in North America where we are providing dispute resolution services principally in an online format 24/7 and with an emphasis on facilitated dispute resolution. So when you talk about hearings, we may not have many hearings. The focus of the tribunal is going to be to try and have parties come to their own resolutions, consensual resolutions.
So
of
there
their
would
disputes.
be virtual hearings, if anything, right?
Well,
with the two parties participating in front of, again, virtually, a mediator, a tribunal member.
Many of the online discussion that happens with a mediator or facilitator or ultimately an adjudicator if necessary may be asynchronous. So it's not about taking a traditional litigation type court trial process and putting it online.
Right.
We're trying to design a completely new dispute resolution process and use online technology to facilitate that, but it's not going to be like trying to move a trial into an online environment.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the interactions between people will be asynchronous, just like email is. You know, you send an email on Monday,
then you wait, right,
and then you wait, and then you get a response. Exactly.
Okay.
So a lot of it will be like that, and then then there will be expert facilitators at the tribunal who will weigh in, if you like, and assist the parties to try and resolve the dispute. And everything won't be completely online. The goal is to try and do as much online as possible, but we can use the phone, we can use good old in-person meetings, or other means of communicating.
Tony, you've been really excited about this whole notion of the Civil Resolution Tribunal for many months now. You've been talking about it on this program for a long time. Why are you so keyed up about it? What pressure is it going to take off the system that is so full of pressure already?
Well, I think the greatest thing that we see in the industry is the economics of disputes. If there is an issue that can't be resolved, and whether it's a strata corporation having to get an owner to comply with bylaws, or an owner has a complaint with the strata because they're not complying with the act, a lot of their remedies really are getting into a courtroom, hiring a lawyer, going to court, and it doesn't take long before you've racked up a cost of $10,000 to $25,000 over something that should be a simple issue to solve.
Right.
Someone at a third party level who's independent independent, should be able to get the parties to a solution. It's about problem solving.
Right.
How do we get these problems solved? Can we get the parties into a consensual situation to solve the problem? If not, eventually it may still go to a hearing of some sort. Someone else may weigh in and impose the decision, or they may be suggested, look, this is the decision that is probably going to happen if it likely goes to a hearing. Do you want to solve this? Can we get the parties to come to an agreement, a solution? It will reduce significantly for Strata Corporation and for owners, average owners and residents in condos. It's going to reduce the red tape that they're faced with in the courtroom.
Okay.
It's going to, it makes it much more accessible. It's plain language. It's the common language that we use for access. It's timely too. It doesn't take 3 years to get a court date.
Right.
Right. It's going to be something that is going to be more current. You have a problem with your neighbor or a problem with the corporation that's affecting your life. You can't wait 1.5 years or 3 years to get this problem solved.
Right.
So it's about providing a good, timely ability to help people get through these problems.
At this early point in this edition of Key Pacific's Talk About Strata, I should let our listeners know that, as will be the case with Dan Russell and Sports Talk in just a couple more hours, our lines are wide open right now. If you want to give us a call and join the conversation, it's 604-280-0650, or from out of town, and all our listeners up and down the coast of Vancouver Island, your number, toll-free, is 1-877-280-0650. Lines are open now. Our producer is Art Factori. You'll talk to him before us. Give us a call and jump in. Cheryl, when this tribunal, you're doing the work, you've got a year left to get a ton of work done, to break new ground, really, in a lot of areas in British Columbia. What do you expect the bulk of the dispute issues to be? Is it going to be the same old, or will this allow for more access for people with other beefs? What's still going to be top of the list?
Well, Tony's probably better to talk to the types of strata disputes than I am, but I anticipate that when the portal, if you like, the online portal to the Civil Resolution Tribunal opens, that we will be inundated with strata disputes that right now are not being addressed because there is not an effective dispute resolution, an effective and affordable dispute resolution forum for that. So anything from your basic bylaw complaints about enforcing bylaws, the disputes about the use of property, disputes about compliance with the Strata Property Act, disputes about whether repairs should be done or have been done, or all of those kinds of disputes can be taken to the Civil Resolution Tribunal.
Tony, affordable, Cheryl's word moments ago, is a key, because you've mentioned it already too. It seems that getting things resolved really in many cases only gets accomplished because you bring in the lawyers and the letterhead and the letters, and that costs money. Mm-hmm. And if you've just got a beef with the guy next door, in apartment 209, and it's something you should be able to work out either between yourselves or in front of maybe some officers of the Strata Corporation, instead it turns into this big legal deal that sets you back a lot of dough. Is this going to just take a lot of the air out of that tire, so to speak?
I would hope it will take a lot of the air out of the tire, and it will make it easier for parties to access some reasonable justice and some reasonable dispute resolution process. Solve the problems that are really hampering the operation of your strata, and more importantly, the day-to-day life of your community.
Right.
It makes the goal out of this is to make justice accessible, affordable, timely, simple to understand. You can use a lawyer, you can use parties for representation, you can get assistance, but ultimately it's going to be you who is the person in the dispute to get it resolved.
Interesting.
And in that process and in that cycle, the anticipation is so many of the disputes that we're left with that really cause a lot of disruption to the communities should start to diminish, and we should start to see, because of this, just the functioning knowledge that, if we don't comply with the act, we're going to be going into a tribunal process.
Sure, okay.
Right? Just the existence of the mandatory requirement for a strata to comply with a complaint is going to compel them to want to start to comply with the legislation.
Okay, Cheryl, just I guess kind of a technical question. Tony mentioned, you can bring a lawyer along if you want. In some tribunal situations, and I'm thinking of the Human Rights Tribunal, among others, lawyers are discouraged. You can't have your lawyer at your side speaking on your behalf. You have to represent yourself. That's one of the ground rules. So will the Civil Resolution Tribunal be different in that regard, in that you could have your attorney with you if you wanted?
No, actually, one of the more controversial aspects of the Civil Resolution Tribunal Act, the way it's written right now, is that it presumes that people will be self-represented unless the tribunal allows otherwise, and in various specific circumstances, like persons, unlike minors or persons with a disability, that kind of thing. But it's presumed that the process is something that you will be able to do yourself. The tribunal is allowed to write rules about when representatives will be allowed and who will be allowed to be a representative, and so we're working through that right now. I anticipate that, people will not be unreasonably denied the ability to have a lawyer represent them if they need it. But keep in mind that a lot of the tribunal processes is not going to be like going into court and having to,
be cross-examined.
Exactly. Right. So you can always go to a lawyer and get advice and get some sort, and then you log back onto the system and say your bit, right, in this asynchronous environment. So it's going to be quite different, and hopefully it will be easy enough and user-friendly enough that people won't feel the need for lawyers. If they want to get legal advice, they're always entitled to legal advice, and in circumstances where it's appropriate, the tribunal can allow people to be represented. Okay, now Cheryl, Tony said you are the more likely to be the better person to answer this question. What do you think the bulk of the beefs of the disputes will be as it is today, and if so, what is that? Well, one of the quirks of the legislation right now is that an owner tenant resident can commence a complaint against the Strata Corporation, and the Strata Corporation is compelled to participate. Okay. Right? It does not work the other way. If the Strata Corporation commences under the current legislation, if the Strata Corporation commences the dispute against an owner, the owner has to consent to participate. Oh. They're not compelled under the current framework of the legislation, which we're kind of hoping that we'll see some transition on that. So really, if the only party that's compelled to participate at this point is the Strata Corporation, then what we're going to probably see the broadest variety of complaints is going to be around bylaw and nuisance issues. Okay. Strata councils who are simply not enforcing their bylaws, or Strata councils and Strata corporations that are simply not complying with the legislation. Okay. Right? They're not providing minutes. They are not repairing buildings. They're not holding meetings when they should be. They're not giving notice of meetings. All those basic compliance issues that we get so many complaints about, they seem trivial, but they have a huge impact on the communities. And so what we'll see is a significant number of complaints probably in that vein. Okay. Under bylaws, I suspect that a lion's share of the bylaws are going to be nuisance-type complaints. Okay. Right? My neighbor's got a barbecue and they shouldn't have. Yes. She's smoking. Right. I'm a non-smoker. Right. They have a dog. Dogs aren't allowed. There's too much noise. Okay, so and basically carrying forward a lot of the same dispute infrastructure that's going on right now. Cheryl, how did this come about? Is this an act of the British Columbia legislature? Is it something the Law Society came up with? How does a tribunal get created in British Columbia? A tribunal gets created by a statute of the legislature. Okay. So the government decided that it was time that there be some sort of tribunal to resolve strata disputes, and the work was done to enact the Civil Resolution Tribunal Act to create a tribunal for those disputes. Now, the Civil Resolution Tribunal Act, the Civil Resolution Tribunal will also have jurisdiction over small claims disputes that currently are in provincial court as an alternate forum for resolution of those disputes. So what the government has done is they've developed this concept of the Civil Resolution Tribunal that will be an alternate for small claims disputes that can now go to provincial court, and will be a method for resolution of strata disputes. And my understanding is that there's been some demand, if you like, in the strata community for a long time to have some sort of affordable dispute resolution forum for the resolution of disputes, and so That's one of the driving forces behind the creation of this statute and this tribunal.
When did this act get proclaimed?
It was passed in May 2014, and so the act has been passed, but it's not proclaimed yet. It will be proclaimed May 2012, last May.
Right.
And then it will be proclaimed when the tribunal's ready to open the door. So,
I see.
So the legislation is in place, but it's not in force. It has to be brought in force, and that'll happen when we're ready to open.
Our guest on this edition of Key Pacific's Talk About Strata here on AM 650 is the acting chair of the very brand new Civil Resolution Tribunal. A real pleasure to have Cheryl Vickers in studio with Tony Giventu and me, Sterling Fox. And we'll be right back. And include your calls. Lines are open, 604-280-0650. Out of town, 1-877-280-0650. Lots more straight ahead. Stay with us.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Our leaky water